day that we meet here for how to break through English paper 2. So last week we were here just looking into paper 1 and a number of things that we highlighted, a number of things that we brought into perspective of how to handle this paper. So today I want us just to look into English paper 2, a paper that is coded as 101/2. 101/2. And with me in studio today, I have just two sample papers. That is, this is KCC 2019, that the paper that was done 2 years ago. And then I also have KCC 2020. KCC 2020, this paper was done in March this year. So we'll also be looking into them just shortly. So just maybe a kind of a short review of what we agreed last week. We said that English is divided into three papers. That is paper 1, that is what we call functional skills, cloze test, and oral skills. This paper carries 60 marks of the total. That is functional skills, cloze test, and oral skills. Then paper 2, the paper that you're focusing on today, carries 80 marks, and this paper is divided into 4 different categories. That is where we have the comprehension, then we have an extract from a compulsory set text, and then from then we have the third part, or the third question of this paper, where we talk about either oral literature or speaker, or not oral literature stroke poem. And then the fourth part of this paper is what we talk about grammar. So again, this is the epicenter or the heart of this paper because it carries 80 marks. So our lesson today is just going to focus on how we are going to get the 80 marks, or at most get the best of this paper. Then later on, maybe in our next class, we'll be focusing on paper 3. Paper 3 carries, again, 60 marks. This is where we'll focus on imaginative writing. Then we'll focus on an essay from a compulsory text. And then there'll also essays from an optional text. So this paper equally carries 60 marks. So if you add the 3 papers, then you realize that you need to end up with 200 marks. So at the end of this series of lessons, we'll just be focusing on how do we get the best of the 200 marks. So maybe a summary of the paper 1, you can equally get them in this book. This is called Functional Writing Book. You'll get them on paper 1. So today, let's just delve into paper 2. So the objective of this lesson is to ensure that the learner is well versed, or the learner is comfortable as much as possible in preparing for this paper. So my approach today will focus on 5 different things. That is, number 1, what is tested. This is 101/2. So look at it into 5 different ways. So the first is just going to look at the approach. What is tested? Number 2, I will look at the examination skills. Then number 3, we are going to look at the tips on how to handle each and every question. Then we'll also look at the challenges the students face in handling different questions. And the 5th aspect is penalties. Penalties are associated with each and every question if you don't get it right. So I'm going to take us through this, and remember, my name is still ZACCH Opondo, a teacher of English and Literature at Ahundura High School. So we want to look at what is tested. That is, English paper 2, 101 stroke 2. What is tested? Question 1, as we said, this paper is divided into 4 different parts. Question 1 is what is called the comprehension. Comprehension. And comprehension usually carry 20 marks. Comprehension carries 20 marks on the aspect of what is tested. Number 2, an extract from a compulsory text. Extract from compulsory text. Then what is again tested here is question 3, poetry stroke oral literature. And in this category, I'm going to give us the different poetries or oral literatures that have been tested since we started testing this paper in 2006. So we have oral literature. So extract from compulsory text carries 25 marks. 25, this carries 20 marks. And then we look at grammar. Grammar that carries 15 marks. So this also carries 20 marks. So if you look at all of them, we end up with 80 marks. So this basically what you're going to focus on in this paper. So I want to just take us through comprehension. And it's good to note that these comprehension passages tests on emerging issues. If you look at KCC 2017, it tested on obesity. KCC 2018, there's a passage on discipline. KCC 2019, there's a passage on history. And KCC 2020, so it's talking about something to do with trade. So it can also test us on something to do with global warming. Maybe because you're in the COVID-19 pandemic, this can also be an area of focus. So a variety of questions will be required, will require your comprehension and inference skills, summary questions, note making, paraphrasing, semantics, and grammar. So I'll just take us through maybe KCC 2020 that we looked into. KCC 2020. So again, we have a paper here that talked about coffee is the most abundantly produced of the non-alcoholic beverages. It's a leading tropical commodity in international trade and is the chief export crop of many of the Latin American and Caribbean countries. So this was a question that was testing us basically on coffee and basically the trade. When you're talking about how it's spread, the coffee trees are native of the highlands of the southern Ethiopia, and the name coffee is derived from that of the highland district of Kaffa, where it was found from Ethiopia. It was taken across the Red Sea. So as we look at this comprehension, we just need to focus on what exactly do we need in order to score the best. And as we said, this question will test you on the comprehension skills. That is the ability to read and understand. Number 2, it will test on your inference skills. That is, are you in a position to interpret the questions? It will also ask you on the summary. Maybe you're told, like this paper, question 1D, asked you that in not more than 60 words, trace the spread of the cultivation of coffee in the world. Again, that is just summary. Then it can also test you on note making. It also tests you on semantics, that is basically on the meaning. For example, question G tested that explain the meaning of each of the following as used in the passage: subordinates, blending, abundant, etc. It can also test you on aspects of grammar, whereby there was a question that asked students that from Ethiopia it was taken across the Red Sea to Saudi Arabia. Rewrite beginning with it. So again, that is going to test on your ability to use grammar effectively. So I will look at various questions that are tested here. So we talked about, it is good to note that this paper, comprehension, will test on factual questions. So there are different types of questions. I think there are 4 different types of questions that are tested here. So we are talking about comprehension, different types of questions. So we are agreeing that 1, it will test you on factual questions. Factual questions. When I talk about factual questions, I'm referring to questions that can be gotten directly from the passage. If you look at KCC 2020, the paper that was done in March 2021, there was a factual question that will begin with something like, according to the passage, where did coffee get its name from? So that is a fact. You simply need to get to the question. So these are questions that are based on facts or ideas from the passage. They are recall type of questions, and therefore the student is simply expected to remember what he or she has read. So when attempting to recall type of a question, the learner is required to use the words or phrases from the paragraph. You are expected to use the word or the phrases from the paragraph. For example, so when you are asked like, according to the passage, where did coffee get its name from? So you simply need to get to the comprehension. So if you read paragraph 2, is it paragraph 2? Yes. Paragraph 2 says the coffee tree is a native of the highlands of southern Ethiopia, and the name coffee is derived from that of the highland district of Kaffa. So a student can simply uplift this directly and put it into his script, and therefore you just score your marks there. So the answer should be the word coffee is derived from Kaffa, a district in Ethiopia. A district in the highland is a highland district of in Ethiopia where it was discovered. So with the factual questions, you are simply expected to lift up, just get the question directly from the passage and then proceed with it. Lift the question directly from the passage and proceed with it. So maybe another question we've talked about is the inference questions. Inference questions. So that is the type of question number 2. Inference questions. Again, with inference questions, these are questions that are not lifted directly from the passage. So the student is expected to do what? To infer from the details provided. Okay? The question may include application questions. So maybe something like, what do you think the practice of growing coffee spread, or why, sorry? Why do you think the practice of growing coffee spread to the rest of the world after the priest's discovery? So this one expects you to do what? To give us your idea, you apply, okay? Application, the student is expected to relate what has been read in the passage to a different situation. So again, these are questions that require the student to make judgment. You're supposed to make judgment on ideas that have been presented. It's beginning with why. So you're supposed to make judgment, give a reason as to that is happening. Then question 3, which is also usually tricky to students, is the summary question. Summary question. It can be a summary or simply note making. Again, this is also an area that it's good to note that most students probably fail this simply because of missing the basics of writing the summary or basics of writing note making. So these are questions that requires you to apply the skills of note making, apply the skills of summary writing that you learned in class. So again, questions on summary, I want to divide them into 2. That is on summary writing, and then later on I'll talk about note making as part of this. So in summary writing, there are words that will be used. For example, in question cases 2020, it was like in not more than 60 words, trace the spread of cultivation of coffee in the world in not more than 60 words. So a summary question will ask you on such kind of questions in not more than, in about 30 words, in about 60 words. So those are the keywords that you need to note. So a question on summary, it's become a quite common phenomenon because it's been tested in a number of times. Let me just give us a breakdown of summary writing. It's been tested a number of times. 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020 has been testing us on summary. So again, these are skills that all of us need to embrace, need to learn, because from what we see, probably even in 2016 it was there. If you just learn this skill, like in 2020, this question carried 6 marks. So it's good to just learn this properly, the questions on summary. So what do you need to do? 1, take note of the words used in about 30 words, or in not more than 60 words, or in not, mostly it's in about 60, or in not more than. So what do you need to know? If you're told in about 30, then that means you are given an allowance of positive or negative 5. So you can write from 25 to 35 marks. If you're told in not more than, again, it allows the learner to have a positive, okay, in not more than allows the learner to have a positive of plus or minus 5. But if you're told in about 30, you just need to write less. You're given an allowance of negative. So again, take note of that, so that your words cannot go beyond the stipulated number. So then, so what do you need to know? That it is worth noting, this is the examiner's tip here, it is worth noting that this question, nothing is marked beyond what is expected. So if I was asked to write 35, the question is in about 35 words. In about 35 words. So that means I'll be given plus minus 5. So any word that is beyond the 40th word is not marked. So it's good to note that, so that you don't exceed that by far. So it's good to note that. So in note making, that we talked about summary now, in note making, the students must answer in point form. So when we talk about note making, so when we talk about note making, there are key things you need to note here is your answers must be in point form. So point form, we look at things maybe to do with the asterisks, the numbering, the alphabetical numbering, etc. You can also use arrows. Just note that it must be in note form. Remember, in summary must be in prose. It must be in continuous prose, so that you don't, if you write in point form, it will be marked, but you will lose 50% of the mark. So if you have to score 60, if you have to go 6 out of 6, you get everything correct, you'll score the 6, then you lose 50. So that means you'll only end up with a maximum of 3 marks. Again, in point form, in note making, if it is 6 marks and you write in prose, that is in continuous sentences, you're going to lose 50%. So the maximum you can score is 3 marks. So again, just take note of that. This must be in note form. Again, you must use the indicators that you're writing in note form. Indicators of note form is simply by the use of letters, hyphens, bullets, etc. It is important to note that a student who does not make notes when required is simply penalized. The penalties is you will lose up to 50% of the marks. So that is basically on summary questions. Then comprehension will also test you on grammar. Comprehension will also test you on grammar. Now, when you talk about grammar, these are the various aspects of grammar that you learn in class. Again, KCSE 2020 tested on that. You're told from Ethiopia it was taken across the Red Sea, so you write beginning with it. KCSE 2019, let's just look at it. I know students, you have it, these papers with you. Again, KCSE 2019, basically it did not have much grammar, but it had the aspect of semantics, whereby you are told explain the meaning of each of the following words as used in the passage. KCSE 2016, 2018. Let's just look at KCSE 2018. Yes, KCSE 2018 again had grammar. It said that a comprehension that was talking about discipline. So the question was, so discipline does not only stem from authority figures such as parents and teachers, but also comes from the person's willingness to do right. Rewrite beginning with not only. So again, this is a grammar question that was going to test you about the use of correlatives. It's good to note that. Let's see another paper. I have a series of papers here again. Maybe KCSE 2016. Yes, KCSE 2016, that is the question on grammar. Okay, identify other words that the author uses in the passage to mean mild corporal punishment. That is the question on semantics. explain the meaning of the following words. Again, that is semantics. But it's good to note that grammar question never misses in when it comes to comprehension. So take note of that. Take note that it also tests you on that aspect of grammar. The next thing that we want to focus on here is the question on evaluation. Again, that is the fifth aspect of the fifth type of question that is expected here. So the fifth one is evaluation questions. Evaluation questions. These are questions that it requires the student to give answers based on their own judgment. So such kind of a question will begin with maybe, what do you think? Or probably with illustrations, describe the attitude of the writer. So again, in that kind of a question, you're supposed to simply evaluate and come up with the attitude. So describe the attitude of the writer. Maybe you need to give your answers, just answer those questions effective. So in conclusion of a comprehension passage, we are saying that one, the learner must read and understand the passage. So the exam tips here is the learner must read and understand the passage. So reading and understanding the passage involves us to employ the skill of SQ3R. SQ3R is a skill that we need to engage here: the survey, question, read, recite, review. So just you have to this is a skill that is taught in paper 3. Read the whole passage to get an idea of what is about. Read the questions given. Classify questions as either any of this, whether it's a factual question, inference question, summary question, grammar question, or evaluation question. Then read the passage again with the questions in mind, and aligning any parts of the answer that is needed. As I said at the beginning, there are some questions that will require you to simply lift this directly from the passage. So read and understand. Number 2, the answers must be given in correct tense. If the question is in the past, or if the question refers to something that is in the past, ensure that your answers are given in the past. Number 3, use complete sentences. So I've talked about this, read and understand. We're also saying observe tense. Observe the tense of the question, particularly on the grammar. If it is a phrasal verb that is in the past, please just explain it in the past. Then the use of complete sentences. Complete sentences. So again, when you're putting your answers, ensure that they are done or they are written in complete sentences. Then the questions on note making must be in point form. I've mentioned that here. If you're doing note making, you must write them in the note form. Summary writing must be done in continuous prose. Full, complete sentences beginning with a capital letter and ending in a final punctuation mark. And remember, final punctuation marks can be a question mark, a full stop, or an exclamative. Then questions on semantic: give the meaning of words using the tense of the word in question. Give the meaning of the words using the tense of the word in question. So simply take note of that. Simply take note of that for us to, just take note of that, just to ensure that you get the correct tense. So it's good to note these questions have been, just lift the answers. You can lift the answers directly from the passage. If probably you're wondering on how to put your answers, lift them directly from the passage and you continue. Then inference questions, we've also said it begins with things to do with in your opinion, or probably what do you think, probably what's the attitude. There's also a question on styles that can be asked. QCC 2019 tested something on the styles that are used. Next thing we want to focus on, probably you can be asked on how to describe an attitude. Again, you need to discuss this, maybe the attitude of the writer towards a particular thing, the attitude of the writer towards discipline. So again, attitude refers to the feelings expressed by the author, the speaker, and is arrived at using the words that the author has used. Some words that are used to describe attitude, particularly in question 1. I know this also applies in question 2, in question 3, that talks about poetry. I'll just give you the words that are used to describe this in probably condemning, admiration. So I came up with this referring to the passage that was talking about discipline, or condemning, condescending, critical, spiteful, scornful, contemptuous, appreciative, etc., etc. So again, take note of that. Summary questions, we've talked about that. Nowadays, NEC has been so lenient on us when it comes to summary questions. They will always give you two parts, beginning with the rough copy. There'll be the rough copy. So yeah, so you'll also have a question on the rough copy, this part. So the NEC has been so lenient, rough copy, and then there is the fair copy. So you'll realize that there's also the fair copy that is used. So the rough part, this is where you're supposed to do your rough work. Whatever you want to highlight, just write it here, so that when you come to the fair copy, this is now when you use the prose form just to put everything in perspective. So take note of that. KCC 2019 also had the same format, the rough copy and the fair copy. It had the rough copy where you're supposed to do your rough work, and the fair copy. Now this is the part that you're supposed to write the final your final answer in continuous prose. So again, the rough copy, sometimes you can cross it, sometimes you cannot, but remember, whether you cross or not, there's nothing much, because it's usually not marked. But I advise students not to cross it, because supposing if you lack time, sometimes the examiner can look for points on the rough work, but it's good just to plan yourself so well so that you ensure that everything is included. I've also said that it must be in prose form, because if not, 50% of the marks will be deducted. Sometimes you can also be tested on paraphrasing. Maybe you're told in your own words. Again, candidates should not use the words. They should not use the words in the passage. Okay, you should use its equivalent. The use of synonyms. Okay, use different words but maintain the meaning. The meaning of the original or the exact sentence must be maintained, but you must use different words. Some of the challenges that we face here include failure to give your responses in full sentences. You simply jerky, your sentences are simply jerky. You'll miss marks there. Failure to interpret the question. It will give you you'll definitely get it wrong. Failure to respond to the question's demand. Again, every time you sit down to answer a question, underline the demand. What is the demand of this question? If you don't get the demand, then definitely you'll get it wrong. Factual errors are also here. Misspelling words. Okay? When you misspell the words, particularly in grammar, the grammar part of this, you're going to lose the marks. Making notes. This is also a challenge. Students probably write in continuous form when they're told to make notes, or they simply make notes when they're told to write in what? In summary. Expression errors. Again, this one falls in the category of grammar. The subject-verb agreement. You simply switch the tense. So those are some of the challenges that are met in this paper. Penalties that are encountered, particularly in question 1, include when you have factual errors, you'll be penalized. When you omit keywords, especially in summary writing, you'll be penalized. We've talked about expression errors. Again, NB, there's something I want students to note here. NB, number 1, for comprehension questions, a candidate can lift the entire paragraph. If you're not sure of what the answer is, simply lift the entire paragraph. If you lift the entire paragraph, it is to your advantage, because now the examiner will have to read that paragraph and find the answer for himself, or just pick the relevant part. Number 2, the answer can be written anywhere. You can write the answer anywhere in the paper. Yeah, just ensure that you refer the examiner to where the answer is. Just guide the examiner correctly. Again, candidates are not penalized for grammatical errors in question 1 except in summary and grammar. So the other parts, maybe the factual questions, again, the grammar may not apply, but it's always prudent that you use the correct grammar. So having looked at comprehension questions, I want now to introduce us to the excerpt questions. Excerpt questions are tested from the 2 compulsory books. After a period of time, KICD issues us with set books. So the 2 books that will be examined in KCC 2021 compulsory include A Doll's House, and Blossoms of the Savannah. So this is a play. This is a play, and this is a novel. From history, these books are tested interchangeably. Like last year, we had a question, an essay paper 3 coming from A Doll's House. So it means that paper 2, the extract was from the Blossoms of the Savannah. So if it goes by the trend, then it means KCC 2021, you'll have an essay from Blossoms of the Savannah and an extract from A Doll's House. So passages in the extracts are picked from either the compulsory text novels or the play. So paper 2 question will be derived from either of these. So 2020, we had an essay. This appeared in paper 3. This appeared in paper 2. This is KCC 2020. So if it goes with that, then it means now this year we'll have an essay. This will appear in paper 2. This will appear in paper 3. So they usually exchanged. So take note of that. But again, for preparation purposes, it's good so that as a teacher, just ensure that your students do practice in both the books so that they get a what? They get a clear understanding of what is needed here. So how is it tested? Okay. Areas tested. Extract focuses on the episodic scenes, the important scenes in the text that propel the plot. There are key scenes in the book. There are key scenes in Blossoms of the Savannah. For example, the arrival of Olekaelo in Nasila. That is a key scene. Again, there's a key scene in A Doll's House. For example, talking about in A Doll's House, the buying of the Christmas tree, the Tarantella dance, the arrival of Krogstad, the arrival of Dr. Rank, the flirting, how Dr. Rank flirts with Nora. Those are key scenes that are tested. So when you talk about an extract, it will begin from a particular page and ends on a particular page. How is it tested? It's good to note that a variety of questions that capture plot development. What is tested here? So we say we are going to focus on areas tested, how is tested, the examination tips, the challenges, and the penalties. So we talked about areas tested. You said compulsory texts. In our case, we have Blossoms of the Savannah, and then A Doll's House. Then how it is tested, the how it is tested, variety of questions that will capture what? Plot development. Okay. It will also test you on characterization, different characters that are in the book. You should know that Olekaelo is a character in Blossoms of the Savannah. Know that Nora is a character in A Doll's House. It will also test you on the themes. This question can also test on aspects of style. It will also test you on semantics, that is meaning, and then this question will also test grammar. So every time you read an extract, you need to note the following. Plot development. How is that extract continuing, helping us to continue with the book? How is it helping us to develop the plot? Characterization. Which characters are involved in that particular test? Which subjects, which themes are there? Which styles are there? Meaning, or probably that you're given two words that are supposed to give a meaning, and then the grammar. So I'm going to focus on KCSE 2019 and KCSE 2020. KCSE 2019 and KCSE 2020. So KCSE 2019, we had an extract from A Doll's House that is a part of the book that began with, in the doorway the children are saying, "Mother, the stranger has gone out through the gate." Then Nora says, "Yes, dears, I know, but don't tell anyone about the stranger. Do you hear? Not even Papa." Then children says, "No, Mother, but will you come and play again?" No, not now. "But Mother, you promised us." "Yes, but I can't now. Run away in. I have such a lot to do. Run away in, my sweet little darlings." So some of the questions that were gotten from then is place the excerpt in its immediate context. Place the excerpt in its immediate context. So this is a question that we categorize in the part that is called the context questions. What happens immediately before or after? So it will ask you on either put it in an immediate context, or sometimes it will ask you in what happened immediately before this or what happened after this. KCSE 2019, what I'm referring to, candidates were expected to say what happens before and after. So the keywords that are used here, keywords that are used in a context question, so you can be asked to put it in its immediate context. So if the word is immediate context, then you need to note that explain what happens before and after. Before and after. If you are told to state what happened after the excerpt, again, explain what happened simply after. If you're asked before, then you're simply supposed to give us the scenes or the episode that comes before. So sometimes we ask students ask, how do you therefore arrive at? All you need to take note of is, don't go too far into the book. Don't go too far away from the context. Give us the episode that is leading to that particular expert. Don't go too far ahead or too far back. Again, remember this has been tested differently. 2016, 2020, 2019, 2018, there was such kind of a question. So don't go too far. Number two, on the extra questions is maybe something on the styles. Identify the style that is there. Let's say, yes, KCSE 2019 was asking identify and illustrate two stylistic devices used in this excerpt. What you need to do is identify the style. So when we talk about styles, you need to identify the styles, identify, and then do what? Illustrate. Identify and illustrate the style. Candidates, the challenge here is candidates sometimes they stroke unrelated styles. Maybe somebody is going to talk about a style of probably juxtaposition, and then they relate it with maybe symbolism. So again, remember, this is not correct. Don't stroke unrelated styles. Sometimes you'll also be asked on the themes. Again, KCC 2019, identify and illustrate two themes brought out in the play. Remember to identify the theme and illustrate. The challenge is students sometimes also stroke themes which are not related. If maybe you are talking about the theme of education, maybe there's education, or probably in there's something to do with patriarchy. Yeah, so don't stroke themes which are not related. Okay, don't stroke themes which are not related. You can also be asked on characterization. Again, identify the character and use the words that describe them. Identification alone does not score. No, sorry, illustration alone does not score, but identification does. No penalties for grammatical errors here. So again, as you encourage students, ensure you always follow the rules of grammar. Factual errors, you'll be penalized on this. If you misspell the name of Nora, the Nora that we have in a doll's house is this Nora. So if you add H, then we are simply saying you are introducing your own character. So these are factual errors which are penalized. Okay, there was a major challenge, particularly when we were dealing with the book The River and the Source. We had Owor Kembo, but students would refer to Awor. So again, these are factual errors. So avoid factual errors. Okay, that is an area that is penalized. So I want us to move to question 3. That is the poetry questions since 2006. Question 3. This is a question that focuses on either poetry or oral literature. So again, good to note that it's been tested. Both of them have been tested interchangeably. 2006, we had the poem called Tough. 2007, we had a poem called Sympathy. 2008, we had a poem called The Splash. 2009, we had an oral narrative. 2010, we had a poem, The Song of the Wagon Driver. 2011, we had oral literature. 2012, we had a poem by Klisch, a German poet. 2013, we had a poem called The Outcast. 2014, we had a poem, Listen, My Dear Bride. 2015, there was an oral narrative. 2016, we had a poem, The Road Less Taken. 2017, we had a narrative. 2018, we had a poem, The Man I Killed. 2019, there was an oral narrative. 2020, we had a poem, Love Is Not All. The question we pose at this point is, what will be tested in the year 2021? That is the role of NEC. I will not predict any, but it's good that a student focuses on both. Just prepare on both. So what is tested here? Areas that are tested here are contemporary poems. In poetry question, we test you on contemporary poems. Poems that are focusing on the things that are affecting us directly. There's a poem written by Everett Stander. This is the poem that was talking about Mwananchi. It's a contemporary poem. Again, that nature of a poem can be tested. How is it tested? Number one, the literal or the implied meaning. The literal or the implied meaning. I always try to encourage students, don't try to overthink. When the poem has been put before us, love is not all. It is not meat nor drink, nor slumber nor a tool against rain, nor yet a floating spar to men that sink. That was simply that poem. So students, don't overthink about the poem. Don't try to start asking yourself, what could this be? What is meant by love is not all? Is it symbolic of something else? Not really. That poem is simply about love is not all. Let me read. There's a poem called The Wedding Eve. Should I or should I not take the oath to love forever? This person I know little about. Does she love me? Or my car? or my future, which I know little about? Will she continue to love me when the future she saw in me crumbles and fades into nothing, leaving the naked me to love without hope? Will that smile she wears last through the hazards to come, when fate strike across the dreams of tomorrow? Like the clever passenger in a faulty plane, wear her life jacket and jump out of the lifesaver, leaving me crash into the unknown? What magic can I see to see what flies beneath her angel face and well-lit hair, to see her hopes and dreams before I take the oath to love forever? We are both wise chess players. She makes a move, I make a move, and when we trap each other out of our secret dreams, hoping to win against each other. That's a poem that was written again by the dear Professor Everett Stander. So, the first question is, comment on the title of the poem. Remember, it's simply about what? The wedding eve. So you're simply supposed to comment on the title, the wedding eve, okay? So don't overthink poetry. Don't try to think in space. It's simply going to test you on the literal meaning. Poetry question will also test on the characterization. Identify maybe who is the persona, the themes. It will test you on the message, the style, paraphrasing, the mood, the tone, the attitude, semantics, and grammar. It's good just to, the skills that we used in analyzing literature, analyzing a set book, are the similar skills that I used in analyzing paper 2 poetry. Remember, paper 1 poetry was focusing majorly. Paper 1 poetry focuses majorly on sound. Paper 2 poetry is going to focus on what? Issues, the styles, okay? Attempts, maybe the areas, the tips on the poetry, tips on how to get the best of poetry is what the poem is about. Simply explain it stanza by stanza, okay? Ensure you get the main theme. Explain it and illustrate it. Explore the message stanza by stanza. Most poems have a simple literal meaning, okay? If you fail to get the correct noun, maybe for the question that is asked, just explain it, elaborate, and get correct, okay? If a poem is about exploitation, remember the theme probably will be on something to do with oppression. Let me read again the poem by our dear Everett Stander. It talks about Mwananchi, and therefore there's this poem. You embarrass me, Mwananchi. Why do you embarrass me with your questions about the new Mercedes I bought, the large farm I own, the houses, the wives, an inflated stomach? Mwananchi, why do you threaten me with your threats? The threats in your bloodshot eyes, fixedly pointed at me wherever I go. Like if you are ready to release the arrow that will deflate me into nothingness. Even the watchmen, the dogs, the police are all not enough to protect me from your increasing shouts to protest. If you're a Kenyan and you've been living in this country for some time, you'll discover that this is a poem that relates with that. Then somebody will ask you, what is the theme? It's simply about the non-performing nature of the what? Of a politician. So, again, tips is identification. Identify the style that is asked there. If you're given a style, identify that style. Is it symbolism? Just identify it. And then do what? Illustrate. The mood. Again, the mood is simply the atmosphere, okay? The atmosphere in the air, okay? Anxiety, uncertainty, restlessness, etc. Then, when you're asked about the tone is simply the manner of speech. It's determined by the subject matter. It's determined by the theme. It's determined by the what? By the message, okay? Usually, the last stanza determines the tone. If you look at KCSE 2016, the last stanza will determine the tone. Something else that will be tested in poetry is attitude. Attitude. Yeah, remember we always have tone, mood, and attitude. So they can be tested interchangeably. Again, Just identify. Attitude is simply the feeling. Remember, we said that mood is the atmosphere. The tone is the manner of speech. The choice of words that are used there is determined by the subject. Then you have the attitude, the feeling towards something. What is the poet's feeling towards corruption? Okay, the choice of words. You'll be tested on characterization. What do we learn about a person? Okay, there's a poem about the introduction. There's a poem called The Introduction that goes with, perhaps it was because of his usual shirt. Again, what is the characterization? Who is being addressed? Again, KCC 2016 focused on that. Semantics. Yeah, KCC 2020. There was something on semantics. Explain the meaning of each of the following words. Nagged. And then we had sell. It can also be tested on application. We say, what lesson can we learn from this poem? It's good to note that when I talk about poetry, the lessons must be stated in the positive. So, oral narratives, again, I said question 3 is tested interchangeably, either the poetry or the oral narrative in the manner in which I had stated. So, topics and areas tested include classification of oral narrative, the features evident in that particular oral narrative, characterizations, the cultural aspects, aspects of translation, the loss of sound patterns, especially this majorly in paper 1, things to do with what is lost. The moral lesson, I've said the lesson must be stated in the positive, okay? We should love each other. Don't put it in the negative when talk about the oral narratives. So, oral poetry, we talk about, maybe let's move into grammar. So again, when you talk about oral narratives, just take your time, read through. Sometimes you'll be asked, identify the use, identify the effect of the poem, effect of the song in that. It gives it the local aesthetic. Sometimes it breaks the monotony of what? Of narration. So again, identify your style and give its effect. Identify a style and give its effect. So, the fourth part of this paper, it carries 15 marks and is very critical. This is where most students get almost nothing because of, not because it is technical, but simply because of carelessness. Grammar. Under grammar, remember we use all aspects of grammar. All rules apply. If you're told to rewrite the sentence, rewrite that sentence. If you're told, if you are rewriting, ensure your sentence begins with a capital letter and ends in a final punctuation mark. Now, this paper will test you on all the aspects, grammar from Form 1 to Form 4, direct and indirect speech. This has been tested in almost every paper. Noun derivations, 2017-2020. The use of ambiguity, 2017-2019. Inversions, beginning with the predicate. Negative signifiers, the correlatives, hardly, not only, but also, not only. Things to do with that. They scarcely, no sooner, okay? Use of were, use of had, just to begin the sentence. It's been there. Cases 2017 had an elaborate set of questions on that. Punctuation marks, inserting the appropriate punctuation mark, KCC 2016. The use of participles, gerunds, it's there. The use of correlative conjunctions, again, neither, nor, not only, but also. That was there, KCC 2020. The use of connectors was there in KCC 2019. The use of idioms, phrasal verbs. I know students, when they see phrasal verbs, they start seeing nightmares and they wonder whether these things exist on earth. Yes, it's good just to learn the phrasal verb. All you need to do about phrasal verb is be keen on the tense. 2016, 2020 talked about that. Filling in gaps with the most appropriate words. That is KCC 2019. There's a question like, fill in the blank space with the correct form of the words in bracket. Anne had not recovered from her dash dread encounter with robbers. So again, you're supposed to choose the base. So just determine which word is missing. Is it a subject? Is it part of the subject or part of the predicate? If it's the part of the predicate, is it the verb or is it the noun? Then that will give you the correct answer. The word choice, again, 2015, 2019 focused on that. Position of adverbs. Again, good to note that adverbs simply modify what? They add information to the verb. They modify the verbs. So take note of that. Prepositions. It's also an area that you need to focus on. And finally, the meaningful sentences. So as we talk about English paper 2, as I said in summary is, this paper carries 80 marks. So I'm just going to give us a summary. Even as we conclude, the paper carries 80 marks. For the last several years, it's always the second paper. After paper 1, then we have paper 2. This paper focuses on comprehension. Some books will call it the unseen text. It focuses on an extract from a compulsory text. An extract from a compulsory text. It will also focus on oral literature, stroke poetry, and then the paper will focus on grammar. So with that, we think now at this point, the students will be able to just answer. Should you have any question, just go to the comment section of this live broadcast, either on Facebook or on YouTube. Just put your question there, and we'll be glad to answer. Like last week, there was a question from Brewster Girls, whether you can adopt the block format in writing letters. Again, it's good to note that just encourage your students. Mr. Baraza, just encourage your students to use either the format as long as there is consistency. So I want to thank you so much, students, for taking your time to listen to this. I want to wish you all the best in your KCSE paper. In the next lesson, we'll be focusing on the dynamics of how to answer KCSE paper 3. I have been your teacher, ZACCH Opondo, a teacher of English and Literature at Wahundura High School. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Sasa sote tuko sawa.